Welcome to our January 7th, 2025 outreach meeting, our first outreach meeting of the new year. Yay, Happy New Year. Welcome back, everybody, from our break. I hope you got some good hibernation and rest time. Um, as always, we like to start by centering the land to decenter the ego and remind ourselves that for time immemorial, humans have coexisted in a reciprocal relationship with the land, and that is something that we can very much aspire to return to. So um, I invite you to find a comfortable seated position, and we'll just do a little bit of grounding to help ourselves remember the land and connect to the land. I invite you to close your eyes. If that's comfortable for you. And notice your feet on the floor, that point of contact with the land, with the earth. And notice the weight of your body on the seat, another point of contact with the earth. And I invite you to just take a few deep breaths in your own time and your own pace, noticing the feeling of your body and these points of contact, breathing to arrive in this moment, to slow down the mind a little bit and recenter and remember being a body. And if there's anything on your mind, anything that might be preventing you from being present in this moment, in this time together, I invite you to just let it out on an exhale. Just imagine it leaving your body, joining with the mixture of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the air around you. Just let the earth take it. And after we let go of something, we can be intentional about the fresh energy and air that we inhale and invite into our bodies again. And before we come back, I'll just invite you to zoom out in your mind's eye to see the land around your body, around the building that you're in, and just cultivate a little bit of gratitude for the stewards of the land, the indigenous stewards throughout time. Maybe some of them are still there, maybe they have moved elsewhere. Just sending some gratitude to our indigenous relatives for the wisdom and the stewardship they have provided for and with the land. And may we also seek to be good stewards ourselves. And when you feel ready, you might wiggle your fingers and toes and open your eyes to join us back in the circle. And let's see, a good check in question for today. I'm just going to say what came to mind when I looked at the trees outside. What are your roots reaching towards?
Mhm.
Over to you first, Ben.
Um, this is gonna sound a bit hokey, but I think my roots are trying to reach towards a deeper time, longer time, backwards and forwards. Um, I was uh yesterday when I was walking Zelda, I started off in a crappy mood and I was consoling myself with, no matter what, we can totally fuck this up and the impulse to life will still carry on. And so really trying to connect into that bigger picture. Um, that provides a little bit of a foundation. Over to you.
I feel like my roots have been reaching into um, just kind of similarly deep relationship, like relationships that um, are sustained over time. So that ongoing commitment and investment in relationship to the land and to people and to practices. Yeah, I've been noticing that sense lately, and that feels nice. All right, so now that we've checked in, I will pull up the agenda for today, which is here. And thank you to Ben for adding our possible topics to the agenda. Um, Seeing as it's a new year, we are coming out of a recent stewardship council meeting where the stewardship council gathered to review our annual report from all the different guilds that we put together for 2024, and to start looking towards this coming year and the design charrette. What are the things that what are our goals for the year for the Lifeboat Academy? What are the things that we'd like to see happen? And it's up to each of the guilds to come up with their proposal for what's next. What are our guilds' um, goals and responsibilities for the year? And so the place where that now lives is our driver statement, which has been revised for this year. And so we can go ahead and I can pull that up. I'm going to actually, let's see.
I have it up already if that would be
Oh, you
easier.
do? Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great. And I can take notes.
Cool. Well, and I will walk you through how the changes have been made. One of the things is you'll notice that it's considered version 1.9 as a not quite version 2 yet until the guild approves it. And of course, this is kind of a negotiating process. So if there's any changes that we want to make, we can send them back to the coordination circle for refinement, or actually, I guess it'd be sent forward to the charrette itself, where we could talk through refining that. And so everything is still very much in draft. I left the original driver statement there because I think what we talked about in the Stewardship Council meeting was really kind of an elaboration on the driver statement. Nothing really seemed like it needed to be changed in the original statement, but then we added a couple sort of refined points. That outreach is really about communication, so that's managing how we communicate out, not necessarily deriving the content that's shared with the other guilds, but figuring out how to get the communication out there, and managing those connections between all boundaries being permeable, the sort of inside the Lifeboat Academy and reaching out um, beyond ourselves. So, the tentacles reaching out. And also the outreach is really about kind of piquing people's curiosity and pulling them in. And then it gets turned over to the other guilds to engage them more directly in the work. So that's kind of where that handoff happens. I don't, how do you want to do this? You want to kind of go section by section?
Yeah, sure. That sounds good.
Well, then, thoughts, reactions?
Cool. Um, yeah, I really like this. I really like the main statement of the function is really comprehensive and clear to me. And I appreciate the clarity around how we the how of communicating is what we're focused on, not necessarily coming up with all the content, because that's also obviously there's a lot of crossover between guilds. But it helps to know that our primary focus is how does it happen? What are, the passwords to the social media accounts, posting on social media, managing the website, how are, I think also like, um, thinking about what we talked about at the seasonal review or the annual review, the social
Mm,
impact, kind of how, like keeping up with how are people receiving the messages? How are they responding? How are they reacting? How are certain things landing? And then
mhm.
communicating that information with other guilds, I think is important.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's my responses for now. Over to you.
Well, yeah, no, those are good points. And I think that's also reflected in the RFPs, the kind of that how part, the what works, what doesn't kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Main responsibilities haven't changed either. And what I did do, and this is all very tentative stuff. I brainstormed, we've been talking about indicators and metrics, and I just created a long laundry list in a spreadsheet, and then as like a grid. So which guilds have some role in which of these metrics?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and um, and it was mostly, I think, the what we had from last year. We had a lot of um, X people onboarded and
Mm,
Y number of groups and things like that. So it was kind of taking that and just putting it in a more uh, consolidated form. So I wouldn't spend. I think this is very much in that kind of emerging and developing category. But
yeah.
the reason I put it in there was in thinking from the guild's perspective for what are some of our high priority activities, the things that actually move the needle on some of these concrete bits are um, are probably, a good guide. Hi, Roland.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Hi, Roland.
Yeah.
So we were just going through the driver statement. So our agenda today is the driver statement and then coming up with things. And so we covered this part already.
Cool.
And I was just going over responsibilities and metrics. And again, I think the dedicated resources and the interdependencies haven't really changed.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea would be that we come up with the action plan. That's the next part. So
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, feedback on main responsibilities, metrics, and resources and interdependencies, that kind of what are the tools available to us. Um, so I guess the what's the circle, Ronnie? Over to you for comment and circle.
Okay. I'll go and then Roland and then Ben. Um, I had totally forgotten about like the metrics, like the number metrics, because I've been so thinking about like how did it feel to be in circle with people and how did the groups go and all of the, I've been very kind of in the more relational and the less statistical, but I also really appreciate having like being able to have numbers to look back at the end of the year because I don't, that's not something I think about as much. And I think it's great to have that information and also to not have that be the only thing that we care about, which obviously is not the case. But I think in some other groups, it's like, oh, we need to meet this number of people or else it's a failure. It's like, no, that's not what we're trying to do, but it is useful information. Um, and I think it can be useful to talk to other people about the actual sort of different kinds of attendance that we have to show that there is interest in what we're offering. Yeah, that's all. Over to Roland.
Um, a completely aside, and just to help me, Ben, can you remind me that I ran in to get on and I left the groceries in Bonnie.
Oh, okay.
If you can remind me to go get it after the meeting, if I appear to have forgotten, and I know how this works, the fact that I've asked you, I will remember, and you don't have to, but now you do in case I don't.
Yes,
So
agreed.
a little, and I can't think of the terms right now, but just sort of following up on what Ronnie was saying, it makes me think of the Curiosity Guild and what's the word that what is the thing that you and April do?
Developmental evaluation.
Evaluations, right? And because the absorbing a little bit by osmosis what you guys do outside of the Lifeboat Academy, and that I think you're talking about bringing that in is that qualitative and quantitative analysis that comes with evaluations is a way of helping to situate and move forward. It's a really useful AMAC reflect tool. Um, so yeah, and so remembering, I like the talk already about remembering about the numbers and also paying attention to the qualitative aspect. And I'm okay with just sort of picking up on what you've already talked about to save time and to so over to you, Ben.
Cool. Yeah, yeah, and I think that's I'm totally um aligned with that. And it makes I'm reading The Master and His Emissary right now, which is about left brain and right brain um sort of approaches to doing the work. And he's strongly advocating right brain, left brain, light brain as a, and it makes me think AMAC reflect is actually right brain, left brain, right brain. And that balance between the right brain and the left brain is that balance between the qualitative and the quantitative. And the thing with the quantitative, I kind of I often forget about it until the end of the year. And then when I go in and I start to pull together some numbers, it's like, oh, well, like um when you add up all the views to all of the YouTube, it's none of them have very many views. We're not going viral or anything like that, but we've got like lots of consistent, hits on the videos. So we have hundreds and hundreds of views on YouTube in the last year, um, which I wouldn't have thought. So it's kind of, it is nice to have these sort of more objective milestones. I think more than anything to kind of measure progress, where we were versus where we are. And and it's like the notch on the, when you're growing up and you get the notch on the door frame. So yeah, cool. Well, so the next bit is actually the core bit, the important bit. And that is I did a little bit of discernment, and I went through the RFPs that we established at the Stewardship Council, and I pulled out the ones that are specifically most relevant to outreach. And I've included a link to the overall themes in the report, so you can always go and look at the full list. But so one of the things we talked about was each guild thinking a little bit about cross-pollination, and in particular, what has outreach learned about um, uh, communication and outreach that other guilds could learn from? Like, what are we learning that would be useful to other guilds to know? Like, how do you use social media, or how do you publicize an event in an effective way? Um, and then we also have the looking at more effective ways of sharing lifeboat conversations more broadly. And this is obviously, I think, kind of like one of the core areas for outreach to be looking at. Um, and we talked about both the channel, among other things, the channels. So, where do we want to put our effort in terms of channels? Also, the how of someone says something interesting in a conversation, how does that get captured and transferred to where it needs to get transferred, what's the process for that? And then the last part, what we were talking about earlier before you got here, Roland, is, how do you make a message that's sticky? How do you actually tell the story in a good way? So that's one area of RFP, and then request for proposals. And then thinking about the cohort, the 2025 Lifeboat Builder cohort, specifically what aspects of that process is Outreach going to take on? And thinking also about the fact that there are going to be new folk who are interested in participating. There already are new folk who are interested in participating in the Outreach Guild. So how do we onboard people effectively? And then the other kind of more general question that everyone is thinking about equally, is all of the guilds are thinking about equally, is how do we deepen engagement and reciprocity? It's something that we've all found is a consistent challenge. So is there anything that we can do from an outreach perspective that helps with that? And how that relates to allyship and finances, and long-term, where do conversations like this live? Are there particular responsibilities that we want to add into any of the guilds, especially into outreach? And then both of the next ones are very much secondary support as far as outreach is concerned. But as we are developing the pharmastery at Spalding Valley, what is outreach's role in that? How can outreach help articulate that message? How do we talk about it? And similarly with the legal structure, as we are moving hopefully soon past what is our legal structure, and we start talking to more people, how do we do that? How do we engage people well, specifically around potential engagement, involvement, investment in the Lifeboat Academy? So those are the potential idea, or the requests that are coming from the Stewardship Council that seem most relevant to outreach. I would propose that we do one round of questions for clarification, and then we do gathering considerations and see where that goes. And the goal is, by the time of the charrette, we should have something that we can put forward to say, here's what we think outreach should focus on in the coming year. Some project ideas. So that's my bit. Back to you, Ronnie.
I don't think I have any questions for clarification. I remember a lot of this from when we came up with it. So, and I also am noticing it feels like a lot in this moment. And that's not necessarily an objective truth. I'm just thinking, oh, like there are a lot of different parts and pieces that are connected and yet need attention. Yeah, that's what I have for now. Over to Roland.
Yeah, likewise, no questions, but I wanted to say I really liked the way that these were presented in the email yesterday to the outreach group. They're really, really good sort of concise phrases that cover them, and that might actually be a way of looking at that as a way of it not feeling quite so overwhelming. So over to Ben.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. I also thought it was a really good summary. Very nice, concise statements. And I think in terms of the it feels like a lot. These are requests. These are not commands or not orders. And part of the request, implicit in the request, is what can we reasonably take on? And like what's a a good stretch goal, stretch don't break. But yeah, it needs to feel like it fits with our capacity and where we are. Um, yeah, and in terms of, I'm wondering if sort of in terms of note taking, I like Roland's idea about starting with the more concise statements that Ronnie came up with, or that you put in the email, and then just dropping that in the Asana task and doing the considerations there as a way of building on from it. So I will stop sharing this. Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I just put them in the Asana task. Um, I basically just went through the list that Ben had populated from the Stewardship Council meeting, and I was like, which of these are outreach? Take these off. Send. So
Mhm.
I can't take a lot of credit. But yeah, I think that these are really concise. So there's 4 questions here. Um, and I guess we could just go question by question and just see what comes up. What are ideas? What considerations? Ben.
I think it might, a counter proposal is we just throw all 4 together and
Okay.
see, basically in
Okay.
that spirit of considerations, a lot of times things just sort of bubble up. So
Okay. For the sake of helping my brain wrap around these questions, I'm going to read them out loud. How can we effectively leverage our great in house conversations to increase interest in the Lifeboat Academy? How can we increase the number of people who experience the pharmastery firsthand and convert those experiences into deeper commitment to the project? How can we support the 2025 Lifeboat Builders to increase engagement and positive experiences to grow our base of support? And how can we convert interest into engagement and engagement into material support for the Lifeboat Academy? Um, well, my first impression of these is that I'm sensing a lot of overlap. Um, it really seems like we're focusing on people experiencing what we're offering, both on the farm and the Lifeboat Builders online support. And um, yeah, it seems like there are 2 main questions. How do we increase engagement? And then really how do we sustain that engagement? And how does that become uh what's the word? A loop. Like the engagement is sustained over time and prompts more engagement and brings more people in. And then it's like lather, rinse, repeat. Um yeah, over to Roland.
Yeah, I agree that it's good to talk about all 4 of them together because there's a relationship between them, and what might be useful for one could also be useful for others, and etc. Um, and I might need a little bit of help with some of the, because seems to be categories, like I'm seeing the word leverage, and that feels like it's maybe a slightly different aspect from increasing engagement. Actually, maybe leveraging and converting interest into engagement might be they might be synonyms of each other, or at least as a close relationship. Anyway, so I think I'm looking at all 4 of them as being a unit with different parts that are I this is my right brain. My right brain is feeling like there's this interconnection between things that that could be interesting to explore. Yeah. Oh, and I've been mostly focusing on uh doing the little social media stuff that I've been doing. So of course I could talk about that, but I don't know if now's the right time to bring it up. So over to Ben.
I was taking notes in Asana and I wanted to share the Asana, and I can't figure out how to do that now on my screen. Oh, there we go. I had to roll that there. Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to add the considerations in here. Because for my brain, it's nice having the visual of what people are saying is nice to be able to help track. Yeah, I like what Ronnie was saying too about, well, and I guess yeah, I'm building on the idea of the loop, the lather, rinse, repeat. And Roland, you're kind of piecing apart like what are the different aspects of the loop. Yeah, and I think it really, well, and I'm trying to leaning into the gathering considerations protocol and only one thing at a time. Um, and I grab for one and it morphs into something else. So, and I think that's part of that process of, I just keep thinking about in the US, it was the Breck commercials and they tell two friends and they tell two friends, but also, that, I had a conversation with Anna from Social Roots yesterday, and they're looking at the technology side of it. And so there's a part of my brain that's really trying to think about what's the interface? This is my consideration is what is the um, soft body to technology and back again interface. Because that's one of the things we've been talking about is we have these person to person, face to face conversations, and then how does that like mechanically get fed into a social media stream that also lands as a person to person communication, not just as more noise out in the ether. With that, I will hand it back to Ronnie.
I'm just finishing up. That's a really good question. And I think kind of the heart of what what many people are trying to do on social media to promote their business or their project. What's coming up for me is I know a lot of people who are building place-based resilience in lots of different ways. And some of them are just doing it. And they have support from their partner, from their neighbors, from their friends. Um, and and I know there are also people out there who want to be doing it and don't have that kind of support. I guess what I'm getting at is what we're offering, maybe thinking more again, and I know we've had this conversation many times, but who are the people that we're trying to reach? And it's not going to be everybody, and that's okay. Um, what does it mean to be engaged with the Lifeboat Academy? When we talk about reciprocity, what does that mean? I guess that's like what are people really signing up for? Um, and what are the barriers to them doing that we can address? This is something that Ruth has taught me as a marketing person. What are the person's barriers to signing up? And how can we make that okay for them? How can we get rid of that barrier? So I don't know if that made sense, but I'm going to pass it on to Roland.
Uh, Yeah, bang, bing, bing, bang. So, how do we find out what it is that are the barriers that prevent people from signing up? Maybe, I don't know if that's just a different way of asking the question, or if that's because I feel like that this is always, and I know always is a totalizing statement, but it really feels like that, that the question is that we don't know why people aren't signing up. And we know that we don't know, but what we don't know is how to find out what the barriers are. Um, and I was also thinking about, um, figuring out if if we are building a culture of reciprocity, then being able to answer the question of, and not as a static thing, but as an AMAC reflect thing. What is it that we need? Because we're not different from the people that we want to attract. So if we can answer for ourselves what we need, then that should at least give a broad sense of what it is that the people that we're trying to attract need. Because we are at the same time people who are just doing it. And we are also the people who are being supported by someone to be able to do it in some way. And we are also, there was a third one, and now I can't think of it, but we're also that person too, that third group that I can't remember. Um, and I was also thinking in terms of ways of talking about it. I did just this morning. I looked up the One Straw Society, which we now have a connection with, and I actually quite like their website. They have the menu bar at the bottom, and one of the categories is stories of impact, and I really like that actually a title for a category. uh, and there's seems to be possibilities as to for us what that could be, what kinds of stories, what do we think of as stories of impact anyway. uh so and I'm blabbering, and there's a lot more that I could say, but I want to continue feeding into the circle, so I'm going to pause there and or offer up what I've just said to the circle and pass on to Ben.
And part of the reason why it's a challenge to share multiple things is because now I want to respond to multiple things.
Yeah, this
Um,
agree.
uh, um, um, I think we do. I think I know. I will say I know what people tell me is a barrier, and I know what, and I suspect what people say is a barrier is not the only barrier, and because what people are saying is a barrier is, well, one thing I just got, actually multiple things I've gotten recently is I'm too busy building a lifeboat to participate in getting support to build a lifeboat. Um, so and the other barrier is there may be people who are out there just doing it. Well, and actually that's also a barrier is the people who are out there just doing it I haven't met any of them who aren't struggling as they do it. Um, and but because they're struggling, it's hard to find uh, people are just feeling overwhelmed in that capacity, and everything seems like more. So being asked to join something seems like something else, to add to the list. So being able to communicate the way in which mutual support works, is tricky. you know, because I think I know I feel at capacity often. And so I try to be really discerning about what to, you know, invest my time in. So, you know, I think that's a barrier there is there, and you know, we talk about change happens at the speed of trust and trust, and this is where there's a bit of a vicious, you know, a catch 22, because you need some time to develop trust, but if you're feeling a time scarcity, you don't have the time to invest in developing the trust that would allow you to find the support. So that's one thing I will throw into the mix. Over to you, Ronnie.
I went outside to let out the dog that I'm dog sitting and had this sudden moment or thought of like how similar in many ways, like the similarities between what happens at the pharmacery and what happens online. And how do we communicate that these are spaces to practice together, practicing relationship, practicing accountability, practicing reciprocity, practicing no communication, facilitation, and you know, we're not asking people to show up to a meeting and commit to a laundry list of stuff. And I think maybe sometimes it can seem like that because maybe that's business as usual, kind of what people are used to. Like, okay, what can you give? It's like, well, what can you give? But also, you know, can you come to 2 meetings a month and just be in the space with us? And we're going to practice together. And the practice that you do here can help you in all the other relationships in your life. That is what's so valuable to me because I am organizing outside of this. I am building a lifeboat. I'm involved in these groups. And so much of what I learn here, I apply in those spaces. And people notice, like people appreciate it. So there's something there for me about how do we communicate that and how valuable that is. Over to Roland.
So there's storytelling. April talked about quite a while ago, short animated stuff. And I'm just thinking of, and I'm thinking in terms of so the first one is more social media. And this would take, I know that this would take some thinking through and some gathering of resources, but using storytelling to talk about this, to talk about, you know, why would it be useful to go slow to go fast? Why would it be useful to invest in reciprocity? Why is mutual support useful for your project? And just having short stories that are animated and then putting them up as sharing them around. And it's still that whole sharing thing that I'm really nebulous about. I don't quite understand how that works or how to get people to share things, or do things just how can things just show up on your feed? I have things that I have no idea how they end up on my feed that end up on my feed. So that's a whole part of the technology that I don't really understand. And I was also thinking about how to encourage people who are involved in groups already and have some connection with the Lifeboat Academy to encourage people in the groups that they're part of to to join the meetings, a little bit like, you know, Ronnie with Austin and with Ruth, you know, how to get people, that the people who come to the Lifeboat Academy, you know, are so that they don't feel anyway. So that there's also that there's the how to get people to do the word of mouth thing. And just come to a meeting, or, here's this short storytelling video that you might find interesting. So I was thinking on two different ways: the face-to-face, person to person, and the social media, um, word of mouth viral thing. So over to you, Ben.
Mhm. Well, and I think that reality, at my last family call, my brother was pointing out that, the downside, and I think what no one really factors in on social media is, you know, there's 8 billion people in the world, probably 4 billion of them are on social media, and they're all doing the same thing.
Mm.
And everyone is clamoring for attention. So part of the challenge is just numbers. There's so much noise out there, it's hard to figure out how to get any attention. And and I think there might also be a little bit of a mismatch too between the medium and the message that we're trying to, it's a medium that's all about quick hits and dopamine hits. And we're saying you should give up your dopamine for a little bit. It's a sort of it's a counter, and I don't think that that is like a poison pill or anything, but I do think that it means we have to kind of figure out how to be trickster about it. Um, but and Roland, when you were talking, it was making me think also, I'm not sure what to do with this, but and I am always very resistant when people talk about leadership, I leave the room, you know, because usually that just means middle manager and pyramid structure, and I'm not interested. But we are talking about people who are looking to take leads. And it's actually one of the frustrations that I feel a lot is, um, everyone's in different places in the landscape, and no judgment or anything, but there are there is, I think, a statistical majority of people who are still passively waiting for someone to tell them what to do, you know, or to fix it. And that is such a pervasive like that. There's so many people that I think want the recipe, like, here are the three steps to follow, and it will work. That it's hard to, and maybe, and I guess what I'm thinking is that maybe that's just not, those aren't people we're ready to talk to, or that are ready to talk to us. So, but there is something in there about like how how can we tell this story that going slow to go fast is important, and that working relationally, especially when part of that story is working relationally, has a lot of downside. You know what I mean? Like it's slow, it's chaotic, um, it's it's often challenging, and we also think it's the right way of working. And how do you communicate that kind of message in a quick, in a short, fun animated video? And I know it can be done, but it just seems like I'm not sure. I don't know how to do it. Over to you, Ronnie.
Yeah. Um, I think one of the, I guess, a tension with all of this stuff is who's going to do it. Like we've talked about, watching the YouTube videos back and pulling out snippets and posting those, and that's something that takes a decent amount of time. That's not a quick snap a photo and post it. That's kind of time intensive. Um, any content creation is gonna take time and energy. And again, it's that dynamic between, we're talking about, we're building a culture together where we're more relational, we're building trust. There's both and there's lots of different things existing at once. And the way that social media works now, especially with the algorithm and AI, that's not how it works at all. Not to mention the culture we live in is already, people are already have fear responses to let's get in a circle and talk about our feelings. People don't want to do that. I mean, they say they do, but a lot of them don't. And so I'm wondering how we can acknowledge these tensions and how we have been working in them and we're going to continue working in them. How does that translate to what we want to do for this year? Within our current capacity, there's already things that we're doing. We've already had this conversation. We did the annual review, right? So
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't feel like I really contributed anything other than how do we move forward from this place?
Mhm.
Over to, I think maybe Roland is not there, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Over
I
to
was just walking around getting water.
Okay, over to Roland.
Um, uh, yeah, can we, I am wondering if I've brought us too much into the weeds, into overly over specific. Because I mean, with anything like making a video or pulling things out of other videos, it's all based on someone has to volunteer to do it. So there's still ideas that are floating out there, but I feel like I'm getting a little bit lost in and what I guess I need help to come back to what the question actually is. And it's and I'm seeing on the screen the four phrases. Um, and where do we want to put our energy in for the rest of the meeting? Because it's already almost 3. So I am just going to ask the question and pass to Ben.
And I think you and Ronnie both are pulling us back to, so yes, we have identified these tensions, and now what's the so what, and sort of what's the biggest bang for the buck. Um, and so I am thinking about appreciative inquiry. What seems to be working? We have more interest than we have ever had in lifeboat builders, and there looks to be a very healthy cohort coming in. Still waiting I'm always nervous about, how many people will actually show up from the people that have expressed interest, but we've got we've got 20 people, I think, that have expressed interest, um, affirmatively expressed interest in being part of it. So, we've got actual people who, you know, imagining rather than imagining people who might be interested in becoming lifeboat builders, here we've got some people who are interested in becoming lifeboat builders. Um, so yeah, I think that's what I think these are great. I think it's um, trust the circle, because the circle brought us, we went broad and now we're coming back to more specific things. How do we actually do something with it? And I think that there's a lot of value in, well, what's working? And and one of the things that I think works is, consistently getting people. I agree, Ronnie, that people are very resistant and hesitant about joining a circle, like joining that level of communication. But for the vast majority, once they're in, they're hooked. Like I way more people, I'm going to say 9 out of 10, but it's probably more like, 19 out of 20 people that I have seen who attend a well-run circle say, this was amazing. This is what I'm missing. This is so different. I want more of this. And so that, I think, is how do we lean into that? You know, um, and with that, I will pass back to Ronnie.
I was actually thinking similarly about, we have this orientation coming up, And Ben, I don't know exactly how you've envisioned the flow of it or the structure of it, but having an opportunity to talk to our lifeboat builders and ask them, it's really the lifeboat circle. It's what does building a lifeboat mean to you? And I was also thinking about like people know themselves and they also don't. So it's like we all have blind spots and we also have wisdom within us about, well, right now I'm really working on accountability and I'd really like some support with that. Or I'd really like to learn how to facilitate a circle. So asking the question, like, what do you want to get better at? What kind of support do you feel like you need? If you don't know, that's fine. Like, we're here to present options. But really, just from the get go in that orientation, having that opportunity to get relational and give people a taste of what that feels like. Over to Roland.
I'm reminded of how young the Lifeboat Academy is, and we're still building stuff. You know, the things are still in its infancy, and sort of being reminded that there are 20-ish people in the 2025 cohort sort of refocuses my thinking. I think I was still in the how do we get people interested mode, but now I'm kind of like, oh, yeah, what about the 20 people who are already interested? So then that's refocusing my thinking in terms of so that this seems like it's more about retention, how to be able to create this culture of reciprocity where people are engaged and feel like there is that they are giving and they are getting. And so what environmental conditions can we build to be able to make that um, culture of reciprocity flourish? And definitely being able to share. But I just keep wondering about, like, do people feel like they have, do they need to feel like they've got a goodie bag at the end somehow? And what's the goodie bag? To over to back to Ben, I suppose.
Yeah, actually, I really like um, that idea that maybe it isn't, maybe it's more about retention or deeper engagement. And um, so, I'm thinking about then too, what is the Outreach Guild's role in that specifically? Um, and I'm feeling like I feel like there's an idea coming forward that is something like, what can outreach do to make it easier for people to share their positive experiences? Because we're talking, and that's, somebody sitting down and going through videos of other people looking for something interesting. It has its place, it has a role, but that's very different than, I came away from this meeting and I really felt excited about this. And because I'm excited, I'm willing to spend a few minutes to figure out how to put that into a form that I can share. Especially if, that's, somewhat mechanical, you know. So I'm thinking it's sort of like, how can the Outreach Guild facilitate, as in make easy, that process for people to self-identify and share on behalf of the Lifeboat Academy? Um, Anyhow, that's my contribution this time. I'll go over to Ronnie.
I think that that does seem like a really core piece of what we're talking about. Um, and it's also so much more potent, for someone who's feeling really benefited by a circle in the moment to, write a paragraph about how they're feeling. It's like and then submit it in a Google form. Like that's really easy. Or take a quick video and send it to us. Um, and I think we could frame it in a really, and that is a form of reciprocity for us. It's like, would you be willing to share how you're feeling after this circle today? Here's the link. Here's how you can do it. That would really, really help us. And you get to be featured on our website, or you can submit it anonymously. And then we can have sections on our website. We can post quotes from people on social media and share like these are actual people's experiences with our work and how it impacts them. And that means that it's less work. Once it's set up, it's less work for us, but we get to actually communicate to the outside world, this is what we're up to. So yeah, I really like that idea. Over to Roland.
Yeah, focusing on retention and deeper engagement is what will let us have stories of impact. I wonder if there's a way to start the ball rolling. Like I know already for me, having a blank page or a blank canvas can be daunting, and yeah. Anyway, I think my brain is starting to shut down, so I'm just gonna pass to Ben.
Yeah, I want to go back up to the questions because I think we've come up to, we started off by saying it feels like all these questions are kind of interrelated and there's sort of different aspects. And I'm like, I think this might be the one thing that unites all of those is like we focus on what's the support that we give to the lifeboat builders is we provide easy channels. We provide reminders and channels that encourage people to reciprocate by talking about their positive experiences, which is a mutual aid, especially Ronnie, it's aim, act, reflect, right? That it's, you set your aim, something happened, and then you reflect, how was that for you? What'd you learn? And even whether you learn good or bad, you know what I mean? Like, failure to practice is a form of practice. And um, and it's the same, and I think it's also the experience that the pharmastery firsthand. I think this is really what we're talking, like the stories of impact that we're talking about are those when people have their own aha about going slow to go fast or the value of relationships or I think another one to put out there is navigating tensions, going into attention rather than trying to avoid attention or run from it. So I think that, we're identifying what are the even online, there are pharmastery-like experiences, which is being part of, actually for me, the gathering considerations, one of my favorite all-time things is when we have no idea what we're talking about. It feels really clumsy and awkward. It feels like we're getting off track. And then all of a sudden something sort of lands in the middle and no one can claim credit for it. And it seems like the right solution. And that's just like magic as far as I'm concerned. And I'd love to be, and this is one of those experiences, right? Um, and that provides this ongoing encouragement. It's like it's okay to fumble through that period where it feels awkward and overwhelming, and I don't know what we're doing here. Yep, okay, and keep going. And on the far side, something will likely happen. And yeah, so I'm feeling I can feel like a change in my energy level around this. So I guess that's my contribution. I think we're on to something. Over to you, Ronnie.
Yeah, I think this is a really good idea. It's We have so many conversations about, the four core of us, what we've learned. and how we've grown and things that we've noticed. And we don't receive that nearly as much from all our other participants. And that's a huge gap. And I followed this feminist teacher once who said, unacknowledged good turns to shit. We forget so easily how we felt, what we learned, the friend, the trust that we build, all of these relational things, we forget them when we don't actually give space to reflect and to be in the energy and to kind of bask in it a little bit. Be like, wow, that was really cool. Um, so yeah, I think developing that mechanism for people to share. And I lived at the pharmacery for 14 months. It's like that is not a small thing, and I haven't actually made any sort of formal testimonial about what that experience was like. And I think that that would actually be that's the other piece of it, right? Is like that would actually be really valuable to me to reflect on that experience and how what I learned and all of those things. So to me, this kind of is checking a lot of boxes, um, and I'm excited about it. Over to Roland.
Cool. Over to Ben.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm starting to think about like what are next steps. And uh I mean, especially if you say in addition, the Outreach Guild will continue to get the newsletter out and do the social media posting, and maybe I think there's probably we can anticipate some small experiments in how we can improve social media posting and stuff like that. But it seems like the new project is really trying to figure out how focusing on our new 2025 cohort and working to support their ability to tell their story in a way that is mutually reinforcing. Because I agree, I think that's the whole point. Is it's beneficial for other people and it's beneficial for the person doing the reflection. Um, so I think really it's just a matter of kind of figuring out what's that look like in details, and that's probably a matter of somebody drafting something like a proposal and then sending it around and seeing how it fits. I will say the other thing too is I drafted a proposal for the badging system, and which will probably be one of the core things that the Curiosity Guild is putting forward. And it totally dubbed, or it feels to me like there are some supporting overlaps there, making it part of a badge earning. Like it's sort of a token. How you earn a token is you do some sort of reflective share. Um, yeah, so I think I'm proposing, and we're getting close to the end of meeting time, and so I'm proposing that the next steps are that we make this the core of our proposal to the charrette, and that somebody offers to draft up a first version of it, and we can bounce that around before the charrette. Back to you, Ronnie.
I volunteer to do that unless anybody else has a burning desire. And obviously, you can. Okay. Just as an interesting aside, Kath has started doing these sessions with people freely offered where they come and she asks a series of questions and they tell their story. And
Mm.
I'm doing one with her tomorrow. So I'm gonna just see what that process is like and then kind of see how that might connect to how we are thinking about how do we tell our stories, how do we support our lifeboat builders to tell their stories and talk about this experience, talk about resilience building. So yeah, I just think that there's some nice overlap there too. So I'm excited about it. Over to Roland.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. It all sounds like good next steps. Over to Ben.
Yeah, I feel complete. I feel like I am consistently impressed with how the process works. And it does feel a little bit magical from time to time. Even the Kath stuff, because I'm also thinking this is the whole thing for me. This is what I think mutual support is supposed to look like. That, Kath is doing her thing, and there's still that relationship, and there might be even this like, oh, well, what if, we put this thing next to that thing? I think so much of this is just, you let chickens be chickens, but you make sure the chickens are in the right place at the right time. And anyhow, I'm feeling good about it. Back to you, Ronnie.
Yeah, I feel really excited because I feel like this has been just kind of a missing piece for a long time. And we've talked about it so much, and yet it's like circling back to, oh yeah, here's like the nugget that makes it make make sense in this time, in this context of this new year. So yeah, looking forward to it. Um, so I have our action item. I will draft that proposal and share it as soon as I can for the process to work. Considerations, feedback, concerns, objections, all those kinds of things. And we covered everything on our agenda for today. So how do we usually do we do a checkout? Okay, it's been a while since I've been in a
Yeah.
meeting. I'm sorry. um, what is your takeaway from our time together today? Over to you, Roland.
Uh, Sorry, right now my takeaway is that I need to eat something because I haven't eaten anything all day. So over to Ben.
Yep, that's a good takeaway. I feel energized and just I am energized and I just want to share this more, and um I think that's what we're talking about. So onward and upward. Over to you, Ronnie.
I love the ancientness of storytelling as a human archetypal experience, and it feels really powerful to be weaving it into our work in this way. And I'm excited for April to be caught up to this because she was definitely part of the inspiration. So yeah, awesome. Well, thank you everybody for being here, and we'll see ya on the flippity flop. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.